Great. So welcome. I'm Ross Yelsey. I'm Associate Director of Admission and Financial Aid at Columbia Journalism School. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining the session. This is November 19th, if I remember the dates right, which is a little less than a month away from our deadline for admissions this cycle, which will be December 15th. So people who are tuning in, some of you might have already started an application to apply to Columbia Journalism School this cycle, or you might be still thinking about it. And, to help you kind of better understand the experience you might be in for if you come to Columbia in the future, I'm really happy to have a panel of alumni from our programs to tell you more about what the CJS experience could be like in our different master's programs. And I'm really happy to welcome Kavita Chandran, Pavni Mittal, Suzanne Ybarra, and Tamia Fowlkes, who are all alums of the school, a part of our alumni board, who will be talking about the kind of CJS experience from their perspective. So we're going to talk a bit about some of the key points of the CJS experience and then leave a little time at the end. If you have questions, you can put those in the chat and direct them towards me and we can answer them there. But I think I'd start, and we talked about this earlier before the panel, is to make it orderly. I'm going to kind of ask, and each of our participants will kind of speak in the order of their first name alphabetically, just to kind of go through that flow. But I thought I'd ask our panelists first, just what CJS program did you graduate from, and what are you currently doing now?
I guess I go first. Hi, everyone. This is Kavita Chandran. I graduated oh gosh, way back in 1998. I did the MS in journalism, and my focus was business journalism and new media. The internet was just about coming up at that time, so we were discovering how to write news using new media. I am currently a journalism trainer with Thomson Reuters Foundation. I worked for CNBC, Bloomberg, and Reuters, and now I train journalists and I mentor journalists mostly in Asia. I'm based in Singapore, and many topics. I train them on climate, human trafficking, modern slavery, business journalism, business supply chains, etc. So I've moved from mainstream newsroom now to training.
Mhm.
Thanks, Kavita. I'll go next. So I'm Pavni. I am based in New York. I graduated in 2016 from the MA Politics and Global Affairs program. So actually, this next year will be our 10-year special. I am currently an international broadcast correspondent and moderator. I'm a contributor at PBS NewsHour and NPR, and I also report for France 24 and anchor shows for Reuters. And as a moderator, I'm moderating panels quite regularly for the UN and World Bank.
Great. And Suzanne?
Hi, I'm Suzanne, and I graduated in 2017. I'm from Los Angeles, and I lived in New York for 4 years total, 1 year for the program, and I stayed for 3 years after. And then I returned to Los Angeles. And I am a freelance writer. I have been published in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, Alpinist Magazine, and diverse issues in higher education. And basically, that's what I do now because I have a family. I have high school age kids, is that I freelance.
Great. And Tamia?
Hi, everybody. My name is Tamia Fowlkes. I'm a public investigator at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. I came to Columbia right after undergrad, so I graduated University of Wisconsin-Madison in 2022 and then came straight to Columbia right after. Immediately after graduation, when I did the Master's of Science program, I was really interested in doing kind of national news coverage. So I interned at the Washington Post and then eventually landed back at my hometown paper in Milwaukee as an investigative reporter. So that's been an exciting and quick journey for me, but I really enjoyed my time.
Great. Might have froze for a second, but hopefully I'm back. So yes, the question I wanted to ask all of you again, for to put you maybe in the kind of similar shoes as the people who are watching this. What were you doing when you were thinking about coming to Columbia Journalism School, and what was kind of the inspiration to apply to CJS? What was kind of your goal at that point?
Oh my God, years ago. So I was a reporter and an anchor in New Delhi with a TV production house called TV18, which at that point used to supply news bulletins to CNBC Asia. I'd already done a master's in journalism from the Indian Institute of Mass Communication in New Delhi. I wanted to study further, and it was really a dream to go to Columbia. Back then, very few people made it to Columbia. and largely because I think A, it was expensive. B, also we didn't have much information about the curriculum, the application process, etc. And this was way back before the internet took over our lives. So yeah, it was a dream. I'm glad it worked out, and at that point, I think I remember when I got in, it was unbelievable, but had made some fantastic friends in CJS after that I've still been in touch with. So, yep.
So interestingly, I actually was an anchor and correspondent at CNBC, which in India, which was taken over by the same company that Kavita worked for.
Oh my God. Oh my
So,
God. We
and while
should connect
applying,
later.
and while applying, I actually wasn't thinking too much. I knew that I wanted, I had a journalism degree, so I didn't need to learn like reporting and writing as much. But the MA program has, does a deep dive into a particular subject, and I really wanted to get more expertise in international, sort of covering international news. And when I got in, I remember I made a call to someone who is a fellow Columbia alum. And I just called, I said, I got in, but I'm doing really well. And she said, just take a plane and go. So I just took a plane and I'm still in New York, so I haven't left.
Yeah, Suzanne, how about you?
I came to journalism late. I went to UCLA for undergrad and I had a degree in art history. I worked in the music business. I managed record producers for many years. And then my older brother was a journalist who was a columnist for the Wall Street Journal, and he passed away. So I started writing as a way to deal with grief. And then I wanted to actually focus on journalism as a way to express myself, and because that's what he had done. So I started taking classes at UCLA Extension and at night, and I did a few basic classes, introduction to journalism, profiles, and I thought, this is really interesting. I'm really enjoying this. And I started taking more and more classes. And then I looked at it and thought, well, what's the end goal here? They don't have a master's degree program at UCLA. There's no journalism, period, undergrad, graduate school. So then they had a certificate program, and I looked at it and I looked at all the requirements, and it was very similar to Columbia with the core classes. Like you have your reporting class, you have your ethics, you have the media and law. And I thought, well, if I take one class a quarter and do all these requirements and my electives, this is going to take me years to get a certificate. So then I started doing my research. And of course, Columbia Journalism School is the best. And I thought, well, you know what? I can just do this in a year and just do this, move to New York, do this full time, go to the best school. So I just thought, okay, I'm just going to apply. I'm going to try it and see what happens. And I got in and I was very surprised, and I was elated. And like I said, I had young children at the time. So it was a bit of maneuvering to figure everything out, but it ended up being personally for myself very fulfilling, and for my family, and it opened up a whole new career for me at midlife. So it was a daunting process to make it all work, but once I got in, like somebody else was saying, I got on a plane, went to New York, and took advantage of that opportunity, and it was one of the most life-changing things I've ever done.
Great. And Tamia, you mentioned you were finishing your final year at Wisconsin when you applied. What was your kind of thought process about why you wanted to jump into grad school right after college?
Yeah, definitely. I think that one of my kind of major goals coming up as a young journalist was always to go to a grad program and to consider applying to Columbia. And so for me, as I was approaching my senior year, that was kind of top of mind always. We had done a lot of hard news and a lot of training for, I think, daily news reporting when I was in undergrad, but I hadn't really gotten an experience to do a lot of investigative or long form writing. And that was a goal of mine as well. So when I approached applying to journalism school, I was like really intrigued by the incredible professors that were at Columbia, but also aware of the large alumni network that I would be able to have if I went to grad school. And so for me, it was all about just expanding on the skill set that I already had, trying to position myself a little bit more strongly in the job industry. And when I was coming out of undergrad, also, I feel like I wanted to do a little bit of everything. I had done internships in broadcast and print and digital, and still didn't necessarily have a pin on like what types of stories I wanted to tell. So I was hoping that I could get clarity in going to grad school. And I think I definitely got to do that and being able to do some investigative writing and also just keep, trying a lot of different skills.
Great. I know people are tuning into this conversation or watching it later, and they're all at least acquainted with kind of undergraduate life. All of us, who have a bachelor's or its equivalent in some degree. Most of that's probably a lot of exams, papers, reading lists, books and things that you're like reviewing. How would you say, I wanted to open this up to everyone, how does the J school experience differ from what you might be familiar with from undergraduate in terms of having a much more kind of set syllabus, more of an academic experience? How does our kind of hands-on training differ in terms of what you'll be doing here? Kavita, I
So,
think.
I did my undergrad in India, in a women's college, in Hyderabad in India, and I did sciences because someone told my family I'm meant to be a doctor. And that was really not something I wanted to do. And whenever I would be studying for these medical exams, I would instead prefer to write articles and publish them in local newspapers. So I think it was just something that I really wanted to do in terms of write, write and publish and stuff. And luckily, I did not clear any of the medical exams. And so the next thing that happened was my master's in journalism in New Delhi. And I think that, one thing led to another, etc. But then when I compared my master's, the first master's with my second at Columbia, there were a lot of similarities, except the countries were so different, and just the way of reporting was so different, the way of um, assimilating and just analyzing news. There was so much to learn at Columbia. There was also the American way of understanding news, which was, for an international student, it was so different. I love New York City. I still do. It's still home for us. But I think when you look at exactly what you said, Ross, about undergrad versus grad, I think the fact that a lot of kids go as undecided in undergrad, there's a reason behind that. You're still very young to understand what is it, what do you really want to do. So that's a big difference. It's all reading and rote culture, and you just don't know what you're meant to do. But I think the moment you reach the grad level, you get a sense of purpose, and lucky are those who kind of know this is what you've been working towards. So I think I found that at CJS, and I'm eternally grateful for the degree I got after that. So yeah.
Pavni, how about you? How was this experience different from what you had done academically before?
Yeah, so a lot, I mean, I agree a lot with what Kavita said because I also studied in all-girls college in Delhi. For me, I think looking back, I think, of course, the curriculum, the MA curriculum is quite unique because you are studying, political science from a journalistic lens. And we also got to take classes at SEPA. And, I think some people signed up for classes at the law school, but that's probably because Amal Clooney was teaching. So I know the guys signed up for those classes. But I think for me, looking back, one of the best aspects of my year was just the education I got from my classmates. We're 16 of us in the MA program in the politics concentration from around the world. And, I think it made our discussions and everything we did so much richer because you were sitting next to someone you would not have probably met unless you went for some exotic journalism conference, and I think to me, when I tell people, the best thing about the J school is the people you'll be studying with.
Hmm. Great. And Suzanne, I know you said you'd studied art history at UCLA. How did coming into grad school for journalism differ from what you were used to from that experience?
Well, I think one of the things that stood out to me the most as an undergrad was the scope of UCLA. UCLA is a huge school at 40,000 students, maybe, huge campus. While Columbia is also a big school, it's not that that big. It's not 30, 40,000 people, but it felt small to me because of the program, because of the way it was structured. And I think my year, there were maybe 290, 300 students. And while you didn't know everybody, there was a huge sense of community, and it didn't feel overwhelming, even though you were in New York City, even though you are going to a large research institution, because we had our own building. And like somebody else was talking about, taking classes different places, my law and ethics class, we're in Hamilton, but everything else was in the Pulitzer Hall. So it felt very, very centralized and very, like I said, like everybody was friendly and had a sense of community, and you have your lounge there. And so that experience was to me very different. And also the curriculum, the experiential education. My undergrad education was not experiential at all. It was looking at slides, going to the research library, memorizing things like that, writing academic papers, footnotes, bibliographies, that type of writing. So obviously journalism is a completely different type of writing, and learning to use dialogue and reporting, and that was very, very different, to learn how to write that way and how to study that way. But the one thing I will never forget is one of my reporting professors said, we believe that you learn by doing. And since I had worked for so many years before that, I absolutely agree with that you just have to do something. You just have to throw yourself in. And that's how you learn, by making mistakes. I should have done this. I should have done that. Or I did this well. And so I think the emphasis on experiential education is also one of the things that was very different from my undergrad experience.
Great. And Tamia, how was that for you? I know you've been doing journalism before you got here, but what was it like kind of being in this program that is very hands-on from day one?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of my biggest motivations for wanting to apply to Columbia and also to move to New York was to report in a new environment. I think one of the things that you hear in the hallways of Columbia all the time is that sometimes the people who are not native to New York are the ones who might find the most interesting stories, because you come at everything with such fresh eyes, and everything seems interesting and compelling. And so I think being in a new environment, for me, I'd grown up in Wisconsin. I went to school in Wisconsin. I'd interned at a lot of the major papers across my state. And I feel like I was very well sourced and kind of comfortable covering a lot of the same things. And when I got to Columbia, I was challenged in so many different ways to look at like any system or entity that was serving the public with kind of like a renewed sense of curiosity. And so I think that that's really beneficial when you come into school, is that you not only approach it with a lot of excitement and kind of fresh eyes about like what you're going to see around the city, but I also think that your professors will guide you through navigating those things in a really beneficial way. A lot of my professors just happen to be people who worked at the New Yorker, which is a writing style that I think I never was exposed to when I was an undergrad. It's a very different process. And so I think that that is also what changes. You kind of like reframe the entire way that you might approach a story. You have people who can tell you what they do for the publications that they work for, both national and local, and how they enhance their coverage. And I think that that was incredibly beneficial for me.
Great. And Kavita and Tamia, you've mentioned a bit about coming into New York now and doing reporting here. Maybe we can dive deeper, each of you, about what it's like to be a student, do reporting in New York City. For most people who are coming to the school are probably not from the area. Some of them are, but I think the majority of people are going to get reoriented in a whole new place, one of the biggest, most kind of vibrant cities in the world. What was that experience like for each of you? Sorry.
Um, so like I said, New York City, oh my God. I mean, there was so much. It was overwhelming at the same time. It was so captivating. I don't know if we still have it, but in my time, we used to have the reporting writing one class, RW1, and we all had our beats, and my beat was Flushing in Queens. And it was really a land of immigrants, right? So the number 7 train that would go to Flushing and back. And I remember always sitting on that train, and like every face had a story. And if only I could just sit and speak with everybody and to create something. It was fascinating. And there was, we had a lot of uh, hands-on experiences. I remember this one time, we all worked, the entire batch worked on a project to produce a newspaper. There was so much of first time digitization happening. I remember in our batch, there was a guy who had come from MIT and he wanted to be a journalist. So all hands on deck, what can he teach us? And I remember we called it third rail. There was so much I learned about the election process, um, while being in New York and interviewing people. And so there was it was just amazing what New York had to offer. People like, fresh college students. I lived in one of the Columbia housing apartments on 114th between Amsterdam and Broadway, which is like a stone's throw from CJS. Very convenient. And there was a pizza place. We have all talked about it every time. We had our 25th reunion 2 years ago, and everyone showed up. We have a WhatsApp group. So the community that Suzanne was talking about earlier, it's still thriving. And I remember, walking a lot in New York because there was always so much to discover. Just love the city. I still do. My daughter was born there, and she's now working in the city, which is amazing because we've come one full circle. So so just captivating and just so much to have learned, and it continues the process. So yeah.
Great. Pavni, what was it like to be, start your New York experience here?
It was great also because I was studying, the politics and global affairs program. So I think being in the most international city had its perks. Part of it was we'd have guest lecturers. I mean, some of them from different schools at Columbia, but we also had the best, the top editors and journalists who would just pop by class. And then for us, so a lot of our assignments were international focused, but you'd always find your sources in New York City. So, it just became like this, uh, like the center of the world for us. And, I mean, we had a lot of fun otherwise as well outside class. And because most of us were international, we sort of lived around campus. So I think it really helped solidify our bond. And, we also have a thriving WhatsApp group. Now people are having babies, so it's more like an international nanny group, but, it's quite active.
Cool. And Suzanne, you came from the other coast to come here. What was it like adjusting to New York from kind of Southern California?
It was a huge adjustment, but in a good way. I'd been to New York many times over the years, and I used to go there for work. But living there was a completely different experience than being on vacation or even being there on a business trip. So again, to the experiential education and just immersing yourself in the city and the culture, it was very, very interesting for me to do that. And again, like you said, I come from the West Coast. It's no matter where you come, it's New York is its own thing. It's completely different. And it's even though LA is the second biggest city, there's a huge difference in population size. And it did feel daunting at first. But on the other hand, as people were talking about the walkability, and it is actually an accessible city, even though it's probably over double the size of Los Angeles, in some ways it is actually easier to get around. I mean, anybody who's been to Los Angeles knows the traffic and how spread out it is, and it can take you, an hour to go 20 miles. So that and the lack of public transportation. So even though it is such a big city, and we had our beat too for our reporting class, and mine was Brooklyn, and I lived on 112th between Broadway and Amsterdam, so very close to the school too. So that was a bit of a trip. But you don't need a car. You take the subway, you figure it out, and then you make your stops along the way and learn new things and different parts of the city and the culture of each neighborhood. So I thought it was a great way just to parachute us into a borough, into the city, and to learn by doing again. So that was the thing that I took away from it the most, was to be able to be in such a huge city, but again, have that sense of community.
Hmm. Great. And to me, like me, we're both Midwesterners. What was it like kind of relocating out to the big city from that part of the world?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think just on that note about, everything being accessible and you can hop on a train and be in a different borough in like an hour, I think that that was incredibly beneficial in terms of just like learning how to like plan out your day. I think there's no time I've been like more responsible about timeliness than when I was in New York because you never know when you're going to get a train delay, or when I was doing broadcast stories, I was like lugging a tripod and a camera and all of these things with me, and I think when you have to navigate all of that and do the reporting, you just learn a lot of new skills about, again, how to negotiate your time frames with your sources, how to figure out what types of stories you want to tell. So I think that that's a learning curve that I also had to be on, which was helpful, and I'll never forget it too. But I also think, again, it's just such a vibrant city. There's so much stories, so many stories to cover. And I think I came in, I think when I first started school, being like, oh, I just want to cover politics, or I'm really interested in elections. And I expected that to be the primary focus of my entire time in school, and then was just pulled in so many other areas. So I think that that's, the best part about it.
Mhm. Great. I know I'm an alum of the MA program myself, so I know we can all talk for a long time about all the different things we did while we were students here. There's so many experiences that students will have at the school. But I wanted to ask each of you if there's certain things that kind of stand out in your memory about specific maybe classes, professors, reporting projects that you look back on especially strongly after years of being out in the world and thinking back on the school experience.
Yeah, so I have this huge gratitude um, and vivid memory of the business reporting class. So I had come from a business journalism background in India, but um, I learned about I had never seen a Bloomberg terminal before until I came to CJS. And my business reporting class was conducted by Josh Mills, who recently retired from Baruch. He went to Baruch from Columbia. And I was really fascinated by the way breaking news constantly scrolled endlessly on screens. And I think 3 years after graduating from CGS, my stint at CNBC, when I found a job at Bloomberg, I remember sending him an email um, thanking him and telling him that one of my interview questions was, what do I know about the Bloomberg terminal? And it was really thanks to whatever I had learned in the business reporting class using the Bloomberg terminal that I think I cracked that interview. So I remember that very vividly. Uh, there are two other classes I remember very vividly. One was, I don't know if they still have it, but we used to have an international class by Ann Nelson. And all of us from different countries would just attend that. And she would dumb down America for us. And it was so important because we would go for law and ethics and all these classes, and they would talk about First Amendment. And, everybody spoke like we were supposed to know everything about this country. And we were all coming from different countries with our own baggage of news and information from those countries. So I think sitting with Anne in those classes and everybody speaking about a topic was really eye opening. And then she would talk about America and everything to us, and then she would host dinners and international cuisine and stuff. So that was one. That was the second one. The third one was the ethics class. And there was so much that tied into news in America in that class, and so I remember these are three really vivid things I remember, and never missing those classes because there was immense knowledge to be gained from each one of those.
Mhm. Pavni, how about you?
Yeah, so I would say for the MA program, we would have 2 3 hour seminar classes every week. And it's so there's a round table and we're all sitting around and it's discussion based and we'd have our guest lecturers, as I mentioned. And because we were such a tight group, we had this reputation of really grilling our guest lecturers. And in fact, the dean at the time called us the Italian mafia because our lead professor, Sandra Stile, is Italian. And I think those sessions uh, were really game changing for me not just because we had great guest lecturers, but also the quality of discussion was really very high. So I think those are some of my best memories. And we also got to take classes I took a lot of classes at SIPA as well. And those were very interesting because it was a completely different perspective. It was more, of course, academic, and your classmates most of them were, like bureaucrats from different parts of the world. But I would say the common thread is just the international exposure you got through the different classes. And one, I don't know if you still have it, the China seminar that Harvard French takes. That's a really, really good class.
Yep, that has continued to be offered some years. Yeah, I think he'll intersperse that with some other areas of the world that he'll teach on as well. But yes, that keeps on going. Suzanne, were there some particular memories you look back fondly on, whether it's classes or projects or both you got to do here?
Yeah, the classes that stand out the most to me were the second semester I took literary journalism with Helen Benedict,
Mhm.
and that was an amazing class. I learned so much from that, and there was a lot of reading. So if you, as the name implies, so if you like to read, that is a fantastic class. And we read Tom Wolfe, David Foster Wallace, um, uh, Joan Didion, just the most amazing, beautiful writers. Where for me, that was very aspirational to read those writers, to think like, my God, I wish I could write like this. I hope I can write like this someday. And just the theme of the class was, you have to read good writers in order to write well. So that class was fascinating. And we would do projects, and you would do a few drafts and then maybe 2 or 3 projects over the semester. So you took your time on those projects. And one of the projects that was most interesting to me was I did it on autism. And we had to have a meeting with her, and I came in with a different story. And she said, no, this is actually your story here about this young man that you met that is transitioning to adulthood, and the spaces that are lacking for autistic adults. So that became a very important story to me. And the young man was maybe 17, 18, but you can receive public education, high school through age 19. So I would go everywhere with him. I would go to his house. I would go with him to walk around Central Park, interviewed his dad, and ended up doing a lot of reporting, even at UCLA at the Semel Institute, met with doctors, psychiatrists, sat in on sessions at hospitals on neurodiversity, and a lot of fly on the wall, just observing, listening. So that was a fascinating class for me, and a particularly fascinating project to really do a deep dive on autism and what it means to be a later age teenager transitioning to adulthood. So that was fascinating. And then the sports writing class I took was also fun. It was also very immersive, where we would get sent out to games and be like, okay, well, here's your press pass. You're going to Madison Square Garden, and you're going to report on this. And then you're going to go into the locker room, and you're going to interview the players afterwards. You're going to go to the press conference. So that was fun and very interesting, and talk about being on the hot seat to have your questions to ask at the press conference, and keep up with the games and see like what a sports writer does, like sitting with your laptop following the details, and moment by moment, play by play. So that was really interesting, and that was a super fun class.
Great. And Tamia, you're the only person I was working, here at the time you were here, so I kind of have a bit of a recall of things you took. But what are some of your fondest memories of classes and projects here?
For me, I think 2 of my favorite classes were actually in the second semester. They were, I think, like seminar focused classes. So one was a healthcare reporting class with Charlie Ornstein, and then the other was a climate reporting class where we produced a climate focused magazine. The climate class, I think, was like one of my favorite experiences because it allowed me to tap into a lot of different skills. I came in not at all familiar with climate reporting, or having not done a lot of it previously, but always really interested in politics. And so I found that there was this law being pushed by local policymakers who were pushing for more protections for workers who were working in extreme heat or extreme cold conditions, talking about the potential health implications of climate change on workers' rights. And ended up talking to one of my classmates about a man who had died in upstate New York while working on an extremely hot day, and just talking about how heat is going to play into our, again, worker protections in the future. So that story really focused on that. And then I also, since I had a big interest in graphic design and doing social media and things like that, I helped develop our magazine's print edition. And so that class allowed me to both kind of tap into a new reporting area that I hadn't done before, and really allowed me to meet my interests at the intersection of both politics and climate, and then also get to produce a magazine with my classmates. It was incredibly rewarding to be able to walk around the J school and hand that out at the end of the semester. I think we all were so stressed about getting it done. So it was a really rewarding class. And then the healthcare reporting class, I think when I was in school, was one of the hardest classes I had ever taken. It was a lot of new information being thrown at us every single time that we had class, whether it was looking into like nursing home inspection reports or just figuring out how to gauge whether or not hospitals were effectively providing care to their patients. But I think it's been one of the most applicable classes to the job that I do now. I just wrapped up an investigation about a nursing home kind of system in Wisconsin where they had like 384 violations against residents that had been reported to DHS and to the Department of Quality Assurance. And I would not have known how to do any of those things if I hadn't taken that healthcare reporting class. So I think that these are really applicable skills that I got to take with me straight into jobs right after school. And that climate class, that story that I did also was published in the Washington Post. So I think that, it was all, really rewarding and beneficial to have that at the end of school.
That's great. Yeah, the skills, I think, from what all of you have been saying, all these different types of topics and subjects and mediums that you've been working in, whether it's, long form, climate reporting, business, politics, all of these different things, sports, there's so many things you can really, get really tangible skills in and kind of carry on into your careers if you wish to. So that's a great kind of just representation from all four of you. I think with just a little bit of time left, I'm going to invite people who are attending this. If you want to ask any questions of our participants, please put them in the chat, direct them to me, the host, and I can see if we can ask a few of those in the last few minutes. But before that, I thought I'd ask each of you about kind of what got you involved in the alumni board, which you're all members of, like what was the inspiration to join this, and what makes the CJS community so special and kind of powerful across the globe.
I think honestly, I mean, I'm at the stage of my life where, like I said, I mentor journalists, I train journalists, and I was already helping some journalists in Asia to apply to CJS, and I saw the impact even after so many years. I think the impact that my CJS degree was having, wherever I spoke at events or I taught, there is that brand value that is that I'm still carrying with me, and so I wanted to see what else I can do to help people. And for me, joining the board was actually initiated by, I'm sure you know Anusha Srivastav, and she was then. She's also, by the way, a former colleague of mine. We were working in Delhi together, and so we go back many years. And then she's appreciated my passion to spread the love for CJS, and I think so. She's the one who invited me to the board, and has been more than happy to see how I can help. And so I'm here to mentor, to help anyone who's interested, especially since I'm on this part of the world in Asia. And there are many people who are so curious about the brand and about what it has to offer. So that's the role I wanted to play.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Pavni.
Yeah, very similar to what Kavita said. So I actually got involved because someone I knew was part of J10, and it just sort of happened. And I think one of the main reasons was because I'm an international student and we have a large cohort of international students. I was sort of liaising with a lot of people who were trying to figure out visas and stuff like that. And for me now, it's just I'm friends with a lot of people on the board, so it's actually a lot of fun. but also, like Kavita said, a way to give back to a community that I think I have benefited from immensely. So, and it's just a great institution to be a part of, and keep being a part of at various levels, for life. So it's just something that uh, came very naturally to me, and I enjoy every second of it. And I've always said this to anyone: if you're applying, or if you're at Columbia and you just need to talk to someone at all about anything, then I'm always available.
Great. And Suzanne, what's been special about being a member of this community, the CJS alumni world?
Well, again, to echo that, what a lot of people are saying is I feel the brand recognition and again the sense of community. Like sometimes I'll be going someplace and I'll be wearing a Columbia shirt, and people will say, "Oh, you went to Columbia? Oh, which school? Oh, I went there. I went to SIPA, or my son goes there." And so I feel like even in a big city like Los Angeles, there are people that you meet and that are part of that community too, and there's a shared pride. And I got so much out of that experience, out of the experience of being at Columbia, that I'm happy to share it with other people and say, you know what, if you're on the fence when we have some of these meetings for new recruits, or whether you're gung ho, like absolutely go for it, take the leap, make a change, and see what's going to happen. It's going to open new doors in a lot of different ways, personally, professionally. Like I said, I experienced a lot of growth, and I want to share that with other people, those opportunities that Columbia is going to give them.
Mhm. And to me, I know you graduated the most recent. What's it like being part of this kind of community, in the first few years?
Yeah, it's been really great. I was asked to be a part of the alumni board immediately after speaking at one of the Columbia orientation days right after I graduated, and talking about entering my first job and wrapping up my internship at the Washington Post. And I've always just really loved giving advice to students. I feel like I've always been someone who like gets a lot of LinkedIn messages from people who are going through the process asking for advice. So for me, it felt really natural to be in a position where I could help improve the student experience and address people's questions. I know it can be so daunting to apply to grad school, to move to a new city, to do all of the things that are associated with pursuing a graduate program. And I've been so, helped by people who are older than me, who attended school before me, who are willing to answer my questions. So it's a great way to pay it forward. And I just feel grateful to be in the room with a bunch of people who are just doing such incredible things and have had such a positive impact on the industry. So it feels really empowering to me.
Mhm. Great. I think we have time. There's a few good questions in the chat, so I think I'll ask those. I think for time's sake, if one or two of our alums want to weigh in on that, we don't need to have each person if that's okay. But if people have a strong kind of response they want to give, please go ahead and answer it. One is a good question about, are there any things as you look back that you wish you had done, like experiences or things you wish you had done as a student here that you'd recommend for new students to potentially do if they're here as a master's student?
Yeah, I would like to answer that. I would say that take advantage of every opportunity that comes your way, and even look at social media, because I look at social media much more now than I did then, partly because of the program. And at my year, we had a social media boot camp. And so I'm always on Instagram, and I'll see things like, oh, it's the college walk tree lighting ceremony, or it's homecoming, like things that I didn't even know about when I was there, that if looking back, just things like that, to be more involved in the community and part of the traditions of Columbia, that I wish I'd done. So I would just say, try to keep up with things like that, not just that they're sending internal communications within the journalism school, but within the broader campus as well, about things like that you could attend.
Mhm.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I'll pass on a piece of advice that I got, which is that, New York is also the headquarter for many other journalism associations, and they all have student chapters. So try and, become members and attend their conventions, because you will expand your network, you will meet recruiters, and you will just be able to, practice networking. The first party you go for, you will not get a job, but, you will build connections. So that's something that, I was advised, and that's something that I did, and I think that really helped me.
Great. And another.
Yeah, I concur. Sorry, I just wanted to say 100%. What I would have done differently was I would have attended more networking events. I used to shy away from them, but I just feel that there was Now, today, I know the opportunities exist there. Just show up at such events.
Great. And I see a few more questions probably we'll be able to get to. So I put in the chat, please write to us if we don't get to all your questions at apply.journalism, especially about anything about particular program fits. Our office was happy to talk to you more about those. One, I think, last question before we need to wrap up would be about kind of a big topic for, I think, each of, us as students. How did you kind of balance your time, especially when you have, reporting assignments for maybe different classes having to go out and report, but also other projects you're working on at the same time? How did you balance different projects against each other and kind of deal with time management as students here?
I guess I can jump in since I was there most recently, but I think I spent a lot of time in the J school. There are two kind of main lounges where people work, and I can say I spent many hours in there with my classmates. I think it's great too because you can always ask your friends, your peers to read the stories that you're working on. We're all usually kind of going through the same thing in terms of juggling a lot of projects, whether it be like you're taking an audio class in one segment of your time and an investigative class in another. I think it's just good to pull out a planner, segment your day, ask your professors also for advice about how they manage their work too. I think one of the first classes that we took when we were at J school was how to manage a long-term project or investigation, which you'll do also with your thesis if you end up going to Columbia. So I think it is just about being diligent about going to school sometimes and blocking out segments of your day to work, but also sometimes the things that you do for fun can turn into a story. So try to also use that as a resource.
Mhm. Well, great. So terrific. Oh, thank you so much. I know some of our, participants in this conversation stayed up very late. They're in all sorts of parts of the globe. So I really appreciate all of you for joining us today and offering such great insights into the student experience here. For those of you who are attending, as prospective students, please, as I mentioned, reach out to us at apply.journalism@columbia.edu if we didn't get to your questions, or if you want to speak more about, your specific interests or a specific background and how to put together a strong application. We're happy to talk more there. As I mentioned, the deadline to apply for this cycle is December 15th, so still several weeks to get an application together. We'll have many more sessions about the kind of the nitty-gritty of applying, and including next week, we'll have an application tips webinar you can join if you want to hear more about how to compile a strong application. Hope to see you there too. And again, thank you so much, Kavita, Pavni, Suzanne, and Tamia for joining us today. And we look forward to hopefully seeing a lot of you at sessions coming up in the future. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you and all the best.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.